Good day. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our live session where we are going to be focusing on SAP Build Developer Certification. As always, my name is David Numalo, your trainer and guide for this series. In our previous sessions, we have now established a foundation together where in the first session, we outlined the certification. The second session, we went through the business technology platform. And on Tuesday, we went through build apps. Today, we are focusing on process automation. We'll be looking at how it creates and manages our business processes, allowing us to make intelligent business decisions throughout key points within our processes. We'll also look at how to create and automate our processes within the build environment. And as with all of our sessions, we will go through an initial theoretical breakdown of the content and then include practical illustrations and examples as we go along. So the first 45 minutes will be us going through the learning journey, the theory, and then the last hour would be dedicated towards the practical illustration because my aim is not only to help you pass the low code, no code certification or the build developer cert, but to also give you that confidence to work with the tool in your real world projects within your clients and your own organization. We will be together for a maximum of 2 hours, and these sessions are not being recorded. This is because they do repeat themselves throughout the course of the year. Please feel free to make use of the chat box to add any of your comments, questions, and concerns, and I will do my best to address them as we go along or in the Q&A session towards the end where we can unmute and then have those questions asked and answered. With that being said, I trust everybody can hear me loud and clearly. I do have my camera on. I am screen sharing. I'm still on the first slide as well. So, um, let's get into it and let's get started. Let's look at SAP Build Process Automation, where we do want to kick off from where we left off. And as I mentioned earlier, the certification itself is 70% process automation and about 30% build apps, meaning most of the tasks that we will be required to do will be within the process automation environment. They are quite simple tasks, and today we will be creating a process that is very much similar in structure in terms of the structure and of the iFlow or the structure of the process as to how it will look like in the certification as well. So today's exercise will be quite uh, useful in that sense. All right. Where we do want to be able to go through our learning journeys, where we see where we picked up, where we left up on, and that was on after having covered the BTP cert or the BTP learning journey, BTP 110, and then having have gone through build apps and this is just highlighting that we do have a practice system that we can make use of, the APP 400 system uh, which is the available pre-configured environment, which allows you to also work with the tools, the build tools. In our case as well, I will be showcasing how to use the BTP trial account to be able to actually create a process, the setup that would be required as well. All right. And yeah, so today's focus will be on process automation. And then on Tuesday next week, we will be going through the end-to-end experience. And then on Thursday, that final Thursday, we will wrap it up with Build Work Zone and Joule Studio. So on next week Tuesday session will be just on the end-to-end experience because this is a comprehensive exercise that puts everything together in terms of build apps, process automation, and a bit of work zone. All right. Yeah, let's jump straight into it, which would be this learning journey over here. So as I mentioned, I do want to just spend the first 40 or so minutes just going through this theory. This theory is just to explain process automation, and the last hour will be our practical exercise, which I will be sharing the Martar file with you. I will be sharing all important files with us in the chat for you to have as reference. Okay. Uh, and the first essentially just highlighting how SAP Build Process Automation is combining a number of capabilities, such as our workflow management, intelligent robotic process automation, and allowing us to then have new customers. These new customers would then be our key users, our business or users, citizen developers who are then able to make use of the tool to drag and drop and create processes. And that is what this is highlighting, that the process automation is an evolved tool which is allowing us to create processes. It is very much compared to and even used in sync with your integration suite. If you are familiar with your integration suite, that is where you develop what is known as iFlows, and your iFlows are processes as well that you can use to communicate between systems. So process automation does allow you to create processes, uh, which we'll see shortly in actually in the next lesson, where we are then starting to get an overview of why processes are needed and why process management software like Build Process Automation is useful in companies, such as in scenarios of a business processes having to um, have a new employee that's being onboarded, all of the process that's required, such as having to gather the necessary information, having to let them sign the necessary documentation, and without proper management of our processes or having poorly defined processes, what that can lead to is then inefficiencies, um, miscommunication, whereas having proper processes would then mean that you do have a lot of accuracy and collaboration within your organization. And that is what business process management is trying to achieve, where it's putting together a systematic approach, right, which is used to improve our business performance. And it then allows us to follow some stages that an organization can follow to be able to identify specific processes that may be required in a department, in an area. We'll see an example of a sales order process. That's a common process within an organization where you are having sales and you want to manage that process. And you want to be able to model, execute, and monetize all of these processes, which is what we're seeing over here, and the various benefits of having processes aligned, uh, which will allow you to identify errors a lot quicker and respond to challenges as well. And this last bit is just highlighting that your process can then go through a life cycle of um, allowing you to create your process by mapping it to get the necessary data. Analysis phase will allow you to analyze your process and the data, and then reconfigure it to then start creating the necessary forms, the necessary user interface that you need. Yeah, which will allow you to integrate with multiple systems and follow a rule-based process, such as if an sales order is greater than $50,000, it needs to go to a manager for approval. Rule-based workflows allow you to then have an approval mechanisms as well. And within a process, it's just highlighting that a process can have multiple roles, multiple people involved. I mentioned an end user, an employee, and a manager, a line manager, and an employee, end user. Whereas you can have the process owner. Um, this would be the person who's responsible for the overall decisions to redesign or redefine the process. The initiator, this is the person that starts the process, whether they capture sales orders or they trigger a process, uh, enter information. You have the decision maker. Uh, this would be the person that would either reject or approve an order, and the participant would be the people the end-to-end users that make use of that process. All right, so I remember this was once a theoretical multiple choice question within um, when this certification was still a multiple choice. But now, in practical sense, how this step is used is when you are designing your process, you specify in the recipients section of your process who should who should receive this process. Should this go to a manager based on a decision table? Should this go to the person that started it? All of this is then controlled within the design of that process. The last bit is then just describing how the process can have multiple working nodes, which is just to say there's multiple ways to create your process. You can either import it from the marketplace, you can build your process from scratch, or you can reuse an existing workflow, or make use of your intelligent robotic process automation side, your automation bots, and all of these just bring together and can also have an hybrid approach where you can combine um, your processes. And then if I scroll down some more, it's just then highlighting the various areas or these 5 points as they were raised. Number one being the market store place where you can go and review a number of templates. That's what we're going to do today as well. We're going to go into the marketplace. We're going to make use of an existing template, and analyze it, see what it's made up of, before we create our own. And part of creating a process is being able to create your own, where you do have the process builder, um, using the process builder. And the process builder too is essentially what will be required from us from the certification. We're going to be building a process from scratch, where this is the landing page, and these are the various artifacts that you can add to your process. It all depends on what you are trying to achieve to determine which artifact goes where. And this is just highlighting some of the most commonly used, where you add a form, which is your user interface, your automation bots. This is a way of automating some of your processes, and the decision table for your business rules. It's essentially an if else, if then statement. If sales order is greater than 10,000, then send to email address manager, you know, business rules. Um, Multiple artifacts, you can send emails, you can add conditions, you can have sub processes as well. You can also make use of existing workflows, ones that would have been built in Business Application Studio, where you can call them within your process, as well as making use of your intelligent robotic process automation, where if you import, you would be then able to import your created workflow. And all of this is just highlighting that they can be combined. They can be combined, where we will shortly see how the automation, this yellow tab, works within a process to reduce manual efforts. Um, like manually read an Excel sheet, we'll use an automation bot to share the order number, and that automation will look in the Excel sheet for that order number and read the line of code in the Excel sheet or the lines, the row, and then place that data in a variable. All of this is possible within our automation. Then this just highlights how we can access process automation, right? Either using the booster or how we've added ours through the service marketplace. And these links are quite useful in if you just want to remember how to access process automation in developer.sap.com. It always has some useful step-by-step guides that allow you to get a view from your BTP trial account as well as to the steps that you'd need to get access to process automation. So these links are always useful. As you can see, it is available within the learning journey. I can share it, and you can also get access to it from the learning journey. Then what we come to see is then how the process store or the marketplace will give you a number of three projects available depending on what you're trying to achieve. So the blue is your processes, a full process. The pink ones are your actions. Um, your actions are your API calls. The certification won't require you to make use of any of the templates, won't require you to call an action. But you can see there is a number of actions, pre-built APIs available essentially. The yellow ones are your automation bots or your automation agents, which allow you to, depending on what you're trying to achieve, have the pre-configured setup already. So like I said, all of this, we will be looking at it practically. We do need to just go through the theory, just so the practical also makes. This section is then just highlighting how once you have imported a template from the automation store, you can edit it to make it your own, which then becomes a process variant. Um, it then becomes a process variant. That's what this section is highlighting. I just want to scroll up here to just to say you have your template and you have your decision table. A decision table, we'll see it in action as well, how it does contain business rules that are relevant for your process flow. It then gives an example of specific amount and how it gets configured to the necessary recipient. A visibility scenario allows us to monitor our workflow to see what data the process retrieved and which steps executed at what particular stage. And then this is just highlighting that you can make a process template your own, which then makes it a variant. So the various pieces of the puzzle can then be put together in a way that works for you. Okay. That is your process variant. Then we are met with our um, import export scenario where it's just highlighting what we can do within the build lobby. If you have a Marta file like we will have shortly, you can import that into your own BTP lobby account as just as a faster way to get access to a project that you can start working with. Okay, so as I've always said, these simulation exercises always best. You can access them as well during in preparation for these exercises or for these live sessions or after the live sessions as well, because they are good for self-study. We have our own exercise that we will be going through, but there will be one exercise or simulation exercise that I will want to showcase in this live session. All right, then we are at our first scenario where we want to introduce the common process that's required within an organization, the sales order management. And this section is just highlighting how the traditional way of a sales order process is it does involve a lot of manual steps. And these manual steps can lead to bottlenecks, it can lead to inefficiencies, delays, and errors within the sales order process. So we would want to see how we can optimize it using SAP Build Process Automation. And that's where we will come to see how some of the steps, like reading an Excel sheet, can then be captured via our automation builder, our automation agent, and storing the data from our uh, Excel sheet into a variable, which will map into our user interface. And all of this just improving the overall process. The next couple of lessons is just highlighting how we would go about and create a project within process automation. These are steps that we will become very familiar with. They're also quite simple steps within the lobby. You just go and hit the create button and it will prompt you to select whether you want to create a process or build apps or work zone site. That is quite straightforward as well. Once you have created your process, one of the common things that you will have to work with and that the certification asks you to work with is working with your forms. And the basic understanding of the form is that your form is your user interface that your user would use to input the data that your process requires. So you can even use your form as a trigger. And that is the most common scenario as well, where um, you have your form as a trigger, and that is what the certification will ask you to do again. Otherwise, you can make the trigger an external API, meaning an application like Build Apps can call it. But in this case, to keep it as relevant as possible, we will be creating a process with a form trigger. Um, like how the certification will ask us to do. And then within that form, you will then have the option to customize it. As I said, it's the user interface. You add headings. So on the left-hand side over here, you're seeing all of the options that you can add to your form. The certification will tell you which ones to add, what should read in the data. All you have to do is just, follow the instructions without adding extra stuff, without not adding the ones that they tell you to add. And what you'll find is that it's very simple. It just becomes very repetitive. Um, Once you've added your forms input fields, they will then act as your variables because whatever you put in here needs to be stored somewhere such that a manager will see what was inputted and will then be able to approve or reject your order. So we'll see how all of that works. This is just highlighting that on the far right-hand side over here, you can just further customize which fields are mandatory, which fields should be read-only within the form. We will see how each of these various checkboxes represent a specific component, a heading, a paragraph, a checkbox, a number field, a table. All of those options are available. All right, and then within the form, when you click on it, you have options to then you have to enter some mandatory details, such as the subject. This is what will be seen in the inbox notification, the recipient. So who's the person that will receive this? In most cases, you will put the process started by recipient, which it picks up based on your logged in user. So for your certification, the recipient will be us, the process started by as well. Okay. And then this first exercise just builds upon the exercise that has been going along, where it adds a form, adds the necessary layout components as well. Okay. It will tell you exactly what to add. It's simple, it just gets really repetitive and um, uh, yeah, you just have to make sure that the spelling is accurate and stuff like that as well. Okay, creating Google form for notifications. All right, yeah. This one is a good point where I do want to raise how you can see how it says a form for notifications because in the certification, they will ask you to send notifications and reading that, and that's where it can be a bit, um, that's where most people get led astray or led the wrong way, because naturally when you read send a notification in process automation, you have the option to add an artifact code, a notification, or an email notification. But what this is highlighting and what the certification expects you to add when it says add a notification is a form. A form is a form of a notification, because when you add a form, it goes into my inbox, and that my inbox is a notification. So please just take note of that, that when they ask you to add a notification, they are asking you to add a form. And without me having have said this, it's quite natural for you in the search or to read this and think, oh, I need to add a specific component code notification, because there is a component code notification, but that element will not work. It has not been configured. So that's just a nice to know. And that's where, they get people to go the wrong way. And then at least I'm here to guide you and to just lead you towards the right path as someone that has gone ahead as well. Okay, let's go ahead and an important element and something that we will be asked to do as well is to add conditions. Adding conditions. Adding conditions is a way to then control which direction your process goes. It's once again another if else type of thinking. So a condition, if I scroll down some more, this one, um, a condition, yeah, an if else rule, just says when you add it, because we are going to add a condition for ours, is that if your conditions are true, then the process should go through this branch. Otherwise, if those conditions are not true, the process should go through that branch. That is all it does. And the certification will tell you exactly what conditions need to be added. And all you need to do is just add them. So if your value is greater than 2, then do that. There could be multiple conditions that need to be true for the branch to be then for it to go a certain direction. So conditional steps, and I'll showcase how to add a conditional branch as well. Once you've added your forms, added some conditions, and you're happy with your process, you would want to release and deploy and then monitor your process. And those are the steps that the first step is to release. It's always a button at the top right that will allow you to release. And then from there, once you release, you do want to ensure that you deploy it. And only when it's deployed will you be able to get your link to your form. Will you be able to make your process available externally as well? Then once that process is running, you do want to complete that process either by hitting submit within the form or by approving or rejecting your process form as well. And this can be monitored within the monitoring section of your process. Um, can be monitored within the monitoring section of your process to see what data was sent, if there was any errors that occurred as well. Then the exercise just goes and shows the processes to release and deploy. We'll see this shortly in our exercise. All right, then we start to, let me see, using advanced features. Oh, okay. Um, uh, sorry. Where were we? Then we start to see the need for the automation artifacts, which is those yellow artifacts that we have been seeing. And all of them, they play the role of moving from manual tasks to automated tasks. A manual task could be, with the common example we've been using, reading an Excel sheet. Whereas now we want to have our automation bot, our agent, be able to go through multiple records in one go, store the data in a variable that can be called in your process, as an example. And the business value of automation goes, beyond just uh, as a way to remove manual tasks. It can improve operations, reduce process execution time, reduce human errors, and it opens us up to making use of our AI automation tools. Cases will then be extracting data, searching for invoice numbers in countless systems, logging instances, collecting purchase requisitions. Because it's a machine, it's able to accurately process a lot more data faster than a human. So it's all about making your process a lot more efficient. Where in terms of the repetitive tasks, it especially does well with repetitive common tasks. So that's when you would develop it in a way that you can loop through your data until it has gone through all of the 100 lines within your Excel sheet. Something that would have taken you 1 hour will then be able to take it, your 5 to 10 minutes or less. Then we're just going through some use cases, some constraints. It can be expensive. The initial setup can take time as well. Um, but overall, it will then allow you to get a great return in investment within that process. Was where we see it working with automating a purchase order creation, where left-hand side we are seeing that automation. And what it will do is that it will take data from our spreadsheet. It has all of these lines of data, and our automation editor, based on how we develop it by adding these components. Open Excel instance is a way for us to prompt it that we're going to send an Excel. Cloud link is where we open our browser and tell it the location of the Excel sheet. Close Excel instance just shows that, okay, we're done. We have now retrieved. Um, uh, we have now received our process Excel instance. For each, then allows us to go through each record within our process order to be able to um, actually store that data in a variable and be able to actually position it within our S4 instance. Okay. So I see someone is asking, please try to explain automation process through practical. Okay. Yes, so we will see this nicely. So I did mention that I do have one practical illustration for this process automation that I do want to showcase. My environment in the BTP trial, I haven't downloaded or I don't have the desktop agent installed, one of the prerequisites, but we will be able to see it in this exercise right now, where we want to boost the sales order management process. So, meaning it's currently working through manual inputs, whereas now we want to optimize it to use a agent, to use a bot. You have unattended mode, attended mode, and this is a way of just allowing us to let it work on its own or with human assistance to help the bot work. It just introduces the editor itself. So in terms of the environment where you would go on the right-hand side, add your artifacts to the process. At the top here would be the toolbar to start the process, debug it, and the console tab is where you would see any errors as well. So it's just breaking down the editor, and the middle section is where you would go and set your variable. So this is the more technical part of the process. Luckily, the certification does not require you to create an automation agent at this stage, at least of the certification. But it is nice to know because you want to be able to create your own, and that's where templates also come in, where you get a ready-made template for your common scenarios like purchase requisitions, and you can edit it to make it your own as well. So yeah, this is just showcasing the data that our agent will be reading and creating and editing that process, looping through the conditions until we can finally test and simplify the automation. So this is the one that I do want to open within so that I can take you through exactly the thinking behind this actual process. And also for the sake of time, uh, I know there are live sessions that focus on creating a process automation, but you can just look out for those. For me, for the sake of time, I do want to focus on what will be important for the certification as well. All right, so currently we are in the automation editor where we've added the necessary components to our editor, and we then want to just understand what's going on, open Excel instance, Excel Cloud link. This is the one that tells it to open the Excel file, create sales order variable. As we saw on Tuesday, variables are important in holding our data. The for each allows the bot to loop through the multiple lines of code within our Excel sheet, storing that data based on the order number into a variable as well. And then now the next question would be, what do we do with this data? So this is just highlighting that it will be stored into a sales order variable with order details as well that have been added. And then we go back to our process because the two work hand in hand. So after we've triggered our form, we're gonna then call our automation before we get to our conditional checks. The automation will just require some mandatory information, an input variable, which will be us telling it which order number it needs to process. And the order number is what the user would input from the form, hence why it's blue. And it's coming from the form trigger. Whatever was inputted. And then from there, we are sending this order number to our automation. And this is the one that then takes that order number and then goes through and is then able to retrieve the data based on that order number. And that's why we now want to test it. So when we test it, we'll see that in our console, the first thing it will ask is enter the order number that we want to work with and the file path as well to our Excel sheet. We input it in there. And then we see the details that get made available to us, such as the shipping country, order amount as well. You don't have to worry about typing the wrong number and so on. So you just get all of the details for that order number listed quite nicely for us over here. The next thing is then what do we do with this data? Because it's part of a bigger process. So that is when we want to then go and optimize our process now that we know we are able to get this data. We had a bunch of fields that we had read from the Excel sheet that we would manually type into this form. Now we can actually go and start removing these artifacts because this data shipping to countries now being retrieved from our actual process automation. So what we're doing now in our trigger form is just entering the order number that we would like to work with. And from there, in our process, wherever we would have sent the data from the form, we're now going to tell our process you're going to get the data from the automation itself. So under inputs, in any form you have inputs, and where there's order number, you're going to tell it to get the order number from the automation. And uh, what this approval form will see would be the or the order amount that has been retrieved from the automation. And then this will just go on replacing all of the necessary fields that would have been retrieved from the manually inputted by the user. These are now being replaced with the mapping. So this is essentially mapping where we're mapping it to get data from the automation. So understanding is quite simple. Just putting it together requires us to have that initial understanding of the steps required to create that automation editor itself. All right, expected delivery date, order amount. So I'm just going to fast forward here because this is just mapping to the necessary fields such that when this process runs, it's getting its data from the automation, showcasing how, because of that developed automation, it can get accurate data that can be sent into our process. Okay, boosting the sales order. Then all of these steps is the steps that would be required to install the desktop agent such that within your environment you can start to test your own automation agent that would be required. It's quite a number of steps are required in but it does work where the final result is that you have added the desktop agent to your tool, which would then allow you to actually work with the environment. Okay. Um, and that's just an overview of your automation. Then work with some decision tables. Uh, okay, so someone is just wondering, do you know if you can add an AI node there? An AI node or AI mode uh, in this desktop agent. I'm not too sure what the question is specifically. If you can just reword it. Um, because this is you're referring to if we can have a language model AI in terms of having like a Joule chat box available within our agent or within our process at least. Because if you would like that, that's something that we would see in the Joule Studio environment. So the Joule Studio the one we'll do next week, Thursday, you will get to see how it's quite similar to process automation in terms of the environment, but the Joule agents and the Joule skills allow you to have that AI type of language communication within your process. So I guess the question to your answer is yes, you can add an AI node. Uh, so it can reason. Yes, yes, yes. That's more done in your Joule Studio using your Joule agents and Joule skill. That is very much possible. All right, then decision tables. Briefly, I do want to fast track because I see I have reached my 45-minute hour mark because there's lots of practical config I do want to showcase. All of this is just highlighting that you can add what is known as the decision tables. We'll see them in action when we call a template from the marketplace that has a decision table. It's just an if-else state, an if-else diagram visual tool that allows you to add logic. Then we do speak on actions as well. Your actions is your API calls, uh, and the action editor allows you to then create your own API calls, using your post, get, and delete, where based on the body, you can send data to your API, which your process automation can call. So all of the pink artifacts are your actions. So an action to create a sales order, where based on the data it receives, it is then you are able to call it within your process. And this is a nice example of how, in this scenario exercise, they do add an action to create a sales order within the system as well. Lastly, this is just once again reminding us of how good process automation works with our RESTful or our REST APIs, which is APIs is our programming interface, which the REST is just the state transfer guideline in terms of how our data communicates with one another. Okay. So specific guidelines that follows to create these APIs using our get, put, and delete methods and verbs. Then the Business Accelerator Hub is the common area where we would go to get a view our um, of our available public APIs that we can test as well, where you would be looking for an endpoint that you would want to use to actually test your API. Okay, yeah, so that brings us to the end of the theory, at least that we wanted to discuss. Now we want to put all of this together in our practical exercise. So our practical exercise will then be carrying on from the BTP environment. As I mentioned, you have the APP environment, which is a pre-configured environment, but I want to work with the BTP because when you are working on a client, you will most likely be accessing it through the BTP platform, and the BTP allows you to have that extra control over the destinations that you can add, over the roles and collections that you would need to add as well. So in my case now, I do have a completed process that I want to showcase, and we'll then recreate that process together. It's quite a simple process, but I will showcase it because it's quite similar to what the certification will ask us to create. Currently, your BTP instance should have this subscription to uh, process automation. You would not have this instance that I added to process automation, which would give you some extra information. For now, I want to delete this because I want it to error so that you see when we need to create this. Because this was me with the other session that I had to create this. So I'm just going to delete this so that it errors and then you see when you need to add an instance and so on. Otherwise, if it's already here, it's nice that it'll work, but I want it to error so that you can actually see, okay, if I ever get this error, I need to check here. Can you remind us what you did to add in your BTP? You ran all the boosters right from build. To get process automation, I added it from my service marketplace. But for build apps, yes, I added it from my booster because my booster specifically was going to add pros build apps, work zone, and my cloud identity. So I just went into my global account level so that on my left-hand side, I get access to the view of my boosters. And within my boosters, I just looked for the build related capabilities and and there is one specifically get started with build. Otherwise, I'll just search build. And if I hit start, it will tell me exactly what it's going to add. It's going to add subscriptions to build apps, cloud identity, work zone. As you can see, there isn't a process automation, which isn't a train smash because then we were able to add it. Um, we were then able to add it to the via the service marketplace. Okay, so I think that answers your question, right? To say, yes, you can use a booster if it is available to add all of your components. Otherwise, if it's not, go to Service Marketplace and search for process automation or whatever other artifact you are looking for. All right, I think we have actually found this error. That is because the process won't appear on the trigger process node even after being published, right? Oh, you're referring to the error that will occur if you don't have that instance. Yes, yes. So that's why I deleted that instance just so we can see an error. Another thing, um, another thing that I added, we go for free or standard subscription for BPA. You go for free subscription. So service marketplace and process automation. This one, it'll, I've already added it, but get you, yeah, here. So the first one that you select is you ensure that you select build process automation. As you can see, there's a number of services available. You select build process automation, and in the plan, you want to go for free. This will give you the access to that subscription to access the app. Instance is what I just deleted. This will give you access to your service key and the credentials that you will require, which will create the instance. In our case, we're going for the free, right? And that is what added that subscription. Instances, we don't have any at the moment. So now with this subscription added, I will then open my process automation. The one thing I haven't shown is that I'd also added a destination because when that's why this is quite sad that build apps is going to be removed. Um, uh, you would have required you would this destination would then be allowing you to have that connection to your external services, your build apps applications as well, where we do have AppGyver property enabled and so on. This is a common service that needs to be added that I want to share in the chat as well. But the client ID and client secret are specific to your details in your BTP. And these details, client ID and client secret, you get them from your instance. All right. So then someone is asking, but in the certification, we won't be able to create an instance, right? How can we overcome this during the, oh, in the certification, you will not need to create, you won't even have access to BTP Cockpit. In the certification, your environment is pre-configured for everything that you need to do to work. So what I'm showcasing is above and beyond. It's just to give you a real world scenario of how to work with the BTP Cockpit. Um, um, I guess I should have just mentioned that, but I tend to mention what is specific to the certification and what is not, but this is not specific to the certification. This is just nice to knows. What is specific to the certification is actually going into your environment and creating your process. In your certification, the only admin task you will need to do, um, all right, I will showcase how to add the destination. Uh, in your certification, the only config that you need to do is going to the control tower. I think I said this last week, going to environments and creating your own environment such that you have place to deploy your artifacts. That's the first config. That's the first thing that you're asked to do. Once you've done that, the next thing will then be creating your actual process. So, all right, no, all good. Uh, Creating a destination, I just went in my BTP cockpit. There's a destination sections, and to add this destination, this is for real world scenarios. This is not for your certification. You can either create manually or you can choose to import a file. And what I'll do is I'll export this destination export, and then I'll share this with everyone in the chat. So it's going to ask where I want to send it. I'll send it to my downloads and save, and I'll just put this destination in the chat. Okay. Um, okay, let me do that now for us. We can input this during the exam also. The exam will not ask you to do any of the stuff that I'm doing. This is just nice to know. The exam is a lot simpler and direct. Uh, you don't have to do all of this config. At least this version of the exam. I don't know what's gonna happen after this 30th of April. I'm also curious to see. I will come in and check to see what changes have been made and what they will test us on. But this current certification series is based on the current version, the version that I've helped countless people pass with confidence as well. All right. So let's go ahead and yeah, I've shared that destination. Now I just want to discuss. We're now in the lobby. And looking at the time, we're still okay on time. As I mentioned, the lobby, the key areas that you want to get familiar with is this top right button, my inbox. If you have any notifications that you send, we will see things coming which will come to our inbox once we've created our process. My inbox, this is where your notifications will come, and you would see any processes that need your attention in here. We will trigger one or two that will come in here. So that's this top right button. Obviously, the create button to create your processes, the import, but you won't need to import in the cert. The left-hand side, the actions. This is where if you want to create an API call, the cert doesn't test you on actions. It doesn't test you on actions, decision tables and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, this is the button to get your APIs. And if you want to create, choose your API source. It's just nice to know, just so you know you come out of this saying, okay, I know where that takes me. Events, I actually haven't had to create my own events. But event would essentially be if a certain condition is hit, then trigger this event. Automation SDK usually refers to uh, your 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 automation type of files if you have any available, or you can add from the store. And this is what we want to see, the store, which has a number of pre-built components, depending on if you're looking for a process, if you're looking for an action, if you're looking for an event. In our case, for example, we may be looking for an invoice process. And in this invoice process, let's say it's an invoice approval sample process. So this sample content is designed to help users get started in automating invoice approvals. So full-on built process. Otherwise, depending on what you're looking for, manage invoices without purchase order. All of these are standard operations that happen within the SAP classical system, but that have now been created as processes, right? So if I click on this invoice approval process, create from template, this will be a copy. I think I have created this one specifically. It has a number of artifacts. So this is what we'll come to see. We'll be in that project, in that process, any documentation to guide us. But once we've created from template, it's then just wanting to open it for us within the process automation environment, where we'll be able to see us. It's quite simple. It does not do too much, but it does what it's supposed to do, and that's the purpose of a process. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to always do multiple things. It can just achieve the purpose it wants to achieve with uh, with the necessary components. It's just taking some time to load over here. Um, where it is opening our process automation environment, all of the artifacts. And the first thing that we are interested in is then seeing our get invoice details. So this sign over here indicates our process. This one, or we can also read based on the type, that this is a data type. Data type describes exactly that. It's a type of artifact that will hold specific data fields. In our case, we're interested in the full process, get invoice details. So let's go ahead and see the basic structure of this get invoice details. Um, we saw also that there is a decision table in there. I'll also open that up, and I saw that there is an automation artifact in there as well. Okay. Where what we want to do is, yeah, so as you can see, this is essentially the full structure of this invoice approval process, where there's a form as our trigger, and that form, if I open it up, some has that initial UI that the user will fill out their employee name, their part, the current date, and with that form details added, it then opens up an automation. Not too sure why it's so slow. And that automation, we want to open it up to see how it actually goes and processes our data. So we'll then open editor, extract invoice data. So it's quite similar to what we saw in that other one. But this one is just even a lot more specific, where it wants to extract data. Um, this is an extraction step. Uh, Extract data, create a variable. Once again, whatever has been extracted, store it to hold the document number, the gross amount, the sender name, and then just log a message for completion. And from there, it goes to the decision table. And this is where we'll see our first decision table in action, which will route us, route our order to the necessary person. Okay, determine approver. This is a decision table, and I want to open this editor. So now we're seeing these various artifacts in work. In the certification, you won't be required to create an automation. You won't be required to create a decision table. You won't be even required to create a data type. All you will be required to do is add a form, add a condition to the form, and test test that process. It's really as simple as that. And that end-to-end scenario is very good in showcasing exactly what you can expect. What you're seeing now is the decision table UI, where based on the inputs it receives, there's some rules. And if we click on the determine approval rule, it is a decision table. And that decision table outlines the if then condition. So if the sender name exists in, which is just a keyword, or has this name, ABC communication, then the email should then be sent to first name, last name, sap.com. It's quite a simple one, as well as if it's telecommunications, then the last name should be that. So a decision table allows you to map if then statements into variables, and those are the variables that you would use for when you want to go through your approve and reject processes. So um, we'll see how that decision table then determined uh, our recipient of our process. So then we have our invoice approval form where the recipient is the determine approver output email variable, which would store the email address of the approver, and another form just um, to capture if it gets approved, what do we see as a notification? And yeah, so that's the mapping. So this is just us going through a standard process. As you can see, there's more than 600 of them available. And if you want to investigate one that is specific to your scenario, you would then be able to go through it. Then you have the monitoring tab. The monitoring tab would then allow you to see any processes that errored, any processes that um, are still running, the data that was sent. So it's very useful in just ensuring that based on what you select over here, if you select completed, canceled, it then filters to show all of those. And um, based on the specific project that you're working in, so I can see I do have a number of processes that I triggered. And uh, the data that was sent, you'll be able to see it in the context. So this is just foreshadowing what we're going to be creating as well. And then at the top here, this will just control if you want to cancel your specific process, if you want to put it on hold, or view the instance details of it as well. If there's any errors, it's usually quite descriptive of what the error is. You would see it in here. Then the control tower you are familiar with. All right, let's go ahead and create our first process where in our scenario, we are a manager and we have a new hire within our company that needs to make sure that they have signed the non-disclosure agreement, they have a VPN, and they have a laptop. And if they have all three, their onboarding process will then be auto-approved to go to the next step. Otherwise, us as the manager need to intervene to check if they are ready to continue or not. Um, and what we're seeing over here is the basic steps of deciding if we want to directly enter into the automation editor view or go into our process where in there you can also call this automation view, but this one would take you straight to the automation editor. So demo automation, and in there we take into the environment where we can then start to create our brand new automation if we would like. Uh, um, and just get familiar with the various artifacts that become available on the right-hand side, whether you want to open an Excel instance or whatever the case may be. Um, yeah. Okay, the URL is different from the tenant and the origin of the desktop agent. That's fine. Configure the desktop agent. Okay. Demo automation two. Okay, create. And this is just loading your dependencies. And what this is doing is just taking us to that landing page where you can see the top action bars, run, test, debug. The right-hand side is where you would have a number of artifacts. This is under activities. And if you want to add a left mouse click, for example, in a certain section, this is creating and designing how your agent, your bot should behave. You know, if it wants to start a timer. It's just drag and dropping, configuring it to exactly what you want. As you can see, there is a number of artifacts available. You can always search for what you want. And this is just only within activities. Otherwise, you have data type of say capabilities, whereas we saw the commonly used one is to set a variable and the data types that you want this to be to use the conditional steps as well, which will bring in this, and if it should loop through the data and the loop. So this automation section does take some getting used to, does require you to create your own automation and have this environment set up so that when you do test it, you don't get any errors. And obviously, these X's are just referring to that specific fields do need to be filled out for this to work. But like I said, for our certification, that is not important. What is important is being able to create a process. To create a process, call it automation process, and we are going to be creating a process of our own, which will work end to end. Okay, and where we just want to get familiar with the environment in terms of where to click, what takes me where, and uh, just building your own process, demonstration process. Um, and this is my process name. And I then want to be able to start building upon it. It all depends on your scenario. So like I said, it's an employee onboarding process. So um, with that, the conditions are that it needs to get approved or rejected based on if they have completed the necessary, um, if they have agreed to the necessary checkboxes. All right, so as you're familiar, this is your landing page. The right-hand side would open up if you need to create variables, input variables, output variables, custom variables as well, that little chevron button. Um, this is the release button. Once we are ready, this one takes us to view the environment variables. If we have any, uh, the top left overview is a easily overlooked one, but it's very useful because it shows you the various artifacts that you can add as well, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And the bottom here is any errors that have occurred. But our focus is on the center, and um, the first thing our process will ask us to do is to add a trigger. What is going to start this? When we were still using build apps, so initially I do have a process that gets triggered in build apps, but build apps will not be focusing on build apps. We want to focus on as close to this certification as possible, where we are going to be submitting a form as a trigger, and this would be the employee onboard form. And employee onboard form, click on the three dots, needs to have some mandatory fields within it. The certification will tell you exactly which fields should be in this user interface, where on the left-hand side, you can see I'm just going to drag and drop to say welcome form. And depending on what we're trying to do, there's a choice, checkbox, number field, date, link field as well. I will need to add checkboxes because I need the user to specify whether or not they have received the VPN, whether or not they have signed a non-disclosure agreement, and whether or not they have the laptop and equipment that they need, access card, and so on. So these are checkboxes that they will tick in. And this will be our initial user interface form. The certification will be specific about the various elements that you need to add. Make sure that you just add all of them um, in the order that they give you and stuff like that. From there, the next step in building this is that specific conditions need to be met. So this is when we will hit the plus sign, where we can see a number of artifacts that can be added: decision tables, actions, forms, approval forms, email, variant templates, script tasks allows you to add some custom scripting, notifications, controls, and events. This is the one that we're looking for. Automations is that automation area that we were just in. Sub processes to call a process within a process, placeholder as well. The controls and events allows us to add conditions. A condition is one of the next steps that you will need to do in your certification, because if a specific condition is true, then it will go through this branch. Otherwise, it will go through the default branch where it might auto approve, or whatever the case. So in our case, we do want to auto approve. So with this conditional branch, we want to open the condition editor. And you will then be required to enter the specific conditions that you need to have based on your input variables. So in our case, it's based on the input variables in here, the equipment, the non-disclosure agreement, and the VPN. And if this is true, and if this is also true, and this is also true, if all three of them are true, all of them have to be true. There's this checkbox to say any. If any of them are true, is when, just one has to be true. But in our case, if all of them are true, then it will auto approve, meaning the condition for this if statement, if all of them are true, it will go through this if condition. And if it is true, then what we wanted to do is then auto approve. Auto approve. Otherwise, if any one of them is not ticked, or if all three of them are not true, then the manager needs to intervene to find out why the employee hasn't received certain information and whether they should approve or reject. So then we need to use the approval form. The approval form, manager approve or manager form. Let's just call it the manager form, because the manager form will then determine whether or not they can approve or reject. Okay. And when the manager retrieves this form, he needs to click on the three dots, open editor. He needs to see exactly the data that was sent from the employee. So this is when in our form editor, once again, you will be told what to add in this form. In our case, we just want the manager to please approve or reject. And what are they approving or rejecting? The data, uh, wrong component, the data that the user would have inputted in the checkboxes. And naturally, they should not be able to change this data. So we need to then ensure that it's read only. Okay, and that data will be based on if they have the VPN, if they've signed the non-disclosure agreement, and if they have the necessary equipment that they need. As you can see, the buttons at the bottom here are then approve or reject. Okay, and that is what the manager will see. And the only way they'll see that data is if we map those fields. So even in your certification, do not forget to map your fields within your form. The mapping is what we're going to do next. So it's just to say that in this form, if there is data sent, the data should be shown based on the mapping. So we've just added a form, and there's currently 7 errors, but that's just because some mandatory fields have not been filled. So let's just cater for these 7 warnings and errors. We added a auto approval form. there's some mandatory fields that need to be filled out. The subject. The subject should read auto approved. The recipient. In our case, um, I want it to be myself, and now it doesn't have that exclamation mark. Um, in here, manager approval. Oh, manager, please approve or reject. And then I would put if I had an order number or employee number for this employee, I would put the employee number so that they see what the subject is, what they see in my inbox. And then the recipient, you can see I'm typing my own here, but in the certification, you would choose process metadata and put started by, which would be yourself. So this would cater based on um, your logged in details as well. In my case, I'm just typing my own, but you would put process started by. Then yes, now we have three errors and the rest are warnings. And the warnings is telling us that, hey, we recommend that you map a value for your VPN NDA manager form. So you entered input fields, but it hasn't been mapped. So I don't know what data needs to be in that field. So that's where we'll go to inputs. And you can see these values are empty. So this is what I'm saying. Don't forget to map. And in here, you click on it. And for each one, you map it to the respective trigger field. Equipment, NDA, and VPN. Just so whatever was inputted up there gets sent in here such that the manager can see. That is as complicated as the certification will be. I'm not kidding you. It's literally this will be the structure. The first thing that you add is a condition. Based on the condition, it will then determine if you go to a manager or I don't know if the other side is auto approval. I think it is auto approval, but it's quite specific as to what the left and the right hand side should have. And naturally, the repetitive work is adding the forms. After the manager approves, what do you see? Do you receive a form or not? Uh, and that's where they'll try and trick you to say, send a notification after you have approved. So that's when I said that the notification is a form. Otherwise, you would want you see the word send a notification and then you'd want to add this notification one, right? Because that's the most natural thing to do. But the certification kind of tricks you in that sense to wanting to use this one, whereas they're actually wanting you to use a normal form. This notification one is almost like an email, but the environment hasn't been configured for it to work. It needs a specific destination added, and because for it to work, and because the search doesn't even allow you to work in BTP Cockpit, it never works. It gives errors. It will make you feel like you need to make it work if you ever select it. Trust me, we've gone down that rabbit hole, but just know where it says send a notification, it is expecting a form notification. Okay, so there's no errors. Yes, yes, yes. So someone is asking, the search tries to trick us by asking us for his notification, but a form is required. Yes, because a form is a type of notification, like we've seen from the learning journey. But naturally, you would see that and think, oh, I need to send out this notification. Um, uh, and then you would add this, try and make it work. It won't work. You get errors. You think something is wrong, and but realistically, you just need to add a form. Okay. Which other area does it try and trick you oh yeah, yeah, but I'll get there. I'll get there towards the end in build apps, uh, the last step. Um, but yes, this is our process. There's no errors, and um, let's release and deploy. If there's no errors for this version 1, release, and um, show project version. It's released, but this is not the final version. We do need to deploy it. The you add form, and how do you have to configure this form added? Please just repeat that. the form you added, how do you have to configure this form added? Oh, okay, so is that what you're asking? You have to click the three dots. You have to click the three dots to say open editor. That's what we've been doing to get to the form editor. So in here, manage form, open editor. This one over here takes you to this screen, and that's where you add the necessary UI components. Does that answer your question? Or you're referring to something else? Okay, just let me know. All right, but yes, I think David asked the form for the if case when it's approved. Yeah. Oh, oh, for when it's approved. All right, yeah, yeah. That one, I'm just not adding it for the sake of time because you've already seen it, but it's literally just adding a form. Yeah. How can it be configured? Oh, oh, okay, I get you now. So in here, under approval, I released it. So I just need to go back to the editable version where um, um yeah, that actually reminds me because my auto approval is gonna bring back blank. So this at least allows me to just add a heading or something. But essentially, I understand your question now. So the notification, there's a plus sign over here. This will be form, and this would read approved. Literally, it would read approved, and it would once again send the data that was approved, create. So this is what I'm referring to. And then now you need to add the subject, the recipient again, and open the editor and just make sure that all of the fields are there. But yeah, that also reminds me that in this one, I don't want it to be empty at least. The auto approval one, at least we see a big heading that says auto approved, just so when we see it in the my inbox, we do have some data to work with or something to look at. You can even put an exclamation mark, auto approved. Okay, but I get your question. So yeah, the notification would just be adding a form. So this form is a task that will arrive in the inbox. All right. Yes, yes, 100%. We're gonna see that now after we release and deploy. And the search does ask you to test it in my inbox. So you do need to go to my inbox. You do need to hit approve. You do need to hit submit as well, just to complete the process. It mustn't stay as running. Okay. So I added that. Uh, yeah, I'm happy. Let me release, save all, call this version 2. What you saw over there is if there was any changes, you can make it version 2.1 or version 1.1.2, depending on how big the change is. In most cases, it might be a spelling mistake or you forgot your map or field. It will then require you to create a new version. So show project version. I then want to deploy this. So you do want to ensure that you deploy this. And then when we deploy, this is where you see your environment that you created. It is important that you select your environment that you created because that was the whole point in step one in the control tower to select your environment. In my case, I'm just going to deploy to this publicly available environment, but in your certification, make sure you select your environment with your unique number. Deploy, and this will then go from released to deployed. And then we then want to see and go to our deployed and active. We then want to go to our form trigger. So our form trigger will then now make our form available as a URL, as a link. Okay, and just give it a moment to load. And on the deployed version, you want to click on your trigger form, where on the right-hand side, it will make available these links where you can copy this link and in our browser, just control paste and this will then take us to our form trigger itself. This is what we created. It's quite a simple one. Let's test auto approval first. So I need to select everything. That's the condition I put for the if condition, that if everything is selected, then it needs to go to that auto approval branch. And then I do need to hit submit. Form was submitted successfully. So there's two areas that we need to check. Number one is our monitoring section, just to confirm that that process is indeed running. And then we then need to go into my inbox to then um, complete that process by hitting accept, hitting submit. So in monitoring, this one also takes a while sometimes. Demonstration 3, that's us. And we want to confirm that yes, it's running and that it reached the auto approval branch. And the context is the data that we sent it. Okay, so it's running. We need to get this to a completed status. And to complete it, we need to go into my inbox, which is this button over here. I see I have it open in my tab, but otherwise you click this button, my inbox, and I'll refresh. And what we are expecting is in our subject, I put auto approved, and we are expecting to see that one heading that I put in there auto approved. Otherwise, this would have been a blank form, like I said. So this is, so after seeing this, you're not done. You do need to hit that submit button. So you hit submit, which will complete your process. I think the certification does ask you to complete your process. So complete it successfully, then it disappears. And then if you go back to your monitoring tower, if I refresh in here, I have it filtered based on running on hold, select my completed or canceled, so that it can show me that my process has completed. So that's one condition. Because the certification has about two conditions that it asks you to test, you would test if it's that condition, run it, test that other condition, run it, then you can proceed. So in our case, we just test auto approval. The next condition that we need to test is the manager approval. So same process. I wonder if I could just refresh this uh, so that it brings back the UI. Yeah, okay. So same process. Go and get your, let me close the tabs that I'm not using. Um, Go and get your copy link URL so that it opens your process. And I want to just say I have signed my non-disclosure agreement, but I haven't received my laptop and I haven't received my VPN. So that is what I want to then submit. And I then want to go into my inbox, which will trigger that other branch. And this is what we're seeing over here. Please approve or reject. And with this is what the manager will see, and they need to approve or reject. In our case, when we hit approve, we didn't put anything in there. Otherwise, if we hit approve, um, um, if we hit approve, it would have sent another form where it would say, yeah, it has been approved. And then in that approved form, you would have just submitted and then you're done. In our case, nothing happens after we hit approve. It just goes and ends. All right. Someone is just asking, can you please show again from where you open this, my inbox? All right. So my inbox can be opened in your build lobby environment. So, your landing page, your build lobby environment. Your my inbox is this top right button. My inbox. My inbox. That one right there will then take you here. We don't have anything currently pending our approval, but it is important to know where it is. And then it's always going to be there. All right, all good. So yes, that's essentially your process, something similar that you'll be required to create. Like I said, it's quite simple. The only thing that gets people to fail, because people have failed the certification, is that they get, quote unquote, tricked, in the wording. And after you've created your process, the certification, yeah, this is the second tricky bit, will then ask you to go to build apps. So go to build apps. I have an application. that I can showcase employee onboarding. It will then ask you to go to build apps and trigger process. Because you have just created a process, you will naturally think you need to call the process that you just created. But the process that you just created is a form trigger. It's not an external API trigger, right? So you would never be able to call that trigger because they ask you specifically to call a form trigger. A form trigger doesn't work like a external API trigger option that is also available. So what they are wanting you to do when they say call a process is directly next to it, it'll say call a process and it gives a name. And that name feels very close to the name that you used in your form trigger, but it's actually you just need to copy that name and use that as what you would then use as your trigger. So you should not look for the one that you created, but just copy the name that they give you, the process name that they give you, and when you come to build apps, you will then use that as your trigger that you put in here. So in here, process, I have a user interface in this case. If this was an external API trigger, we use the form. External API means this would have been our user interface. Build apps would have been our user interface. The user would have selected their options and they would have hit submit. In that submit, it would have called this stuff, a dialog box just to say, are you ready to be onboarded? Then, if you are ready through the yes node, it then triggers a process. Otherwise, if you're not ready, it opens a URL to take you to the learning.sap.com to further study. It's not specific to employee onboarding, but it can open any link to say, go and fill out these details. The important section is that in this trigger process, which you find within the process trigger process, is this one. You can see I have my employee onboarding selected, my process selected, and uh-huh, and you need to map the input variables. So um, this is just telling it that it's the mapping. It's the mapping to say whatever was selected in my user interface at the top there should then be sent to my process, just so it knows what data it's working with. It's just the mapping. And if it's successful, bring back a successful message saying submitted. Otherwise, bring back an error message. So the only trick here is that in this process that you're going to be selecting, you don't look for the one that you created. Look for the name that it gives you. It'll give you a specific name and you will find it. And that's the one that you would put in here. And to put it in there, you need to go to integrations. You need to go to process builder. But we'll see all of this in the end-to-end scenario on Tuesday. Add integration. Let's say build library, and then in here, look for processes. And in processes, it will show you a list of available processes, and you would then search for the one that you are asked to put. That's about it. And you're more than ready okay, you guys are understanding, right? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that is literally the only last tricky bit because that is deceiving. You get stuck saying, but I can't find the process that they're looking for, or I can't find my own process. It's just remembering that your form is a form trigger, meaning it is supposed to work via URL, and the form they're asking you to add is specific to the name that they gave you, even though that name feels so close to the same name you created. Yeah. Yes, you will be asked. So someone is asking. There's also another question. Before that. Hello. Today I could not attend most of the class due to repeated system restarts. Could you please share a step-by-step PDF of the live sessions? Otherwise, you can give a summary of the current class. All right. I'll do so towards the end. Because we're almost at the Q&A section, and I do want to share. What can I share? I'll share this Malta file. I haven't shared it actually of this. Um uh, of this process. I'll share the editable version. But also in the end-to-end scenario we'll do next week, you will also get something out of it. Export this. So we will call to a process uh, that is not our created process. Yes, it will be another process which is previously created by someone. It's a process that is available within the system. That's the long and the short of it. It's a process that is available. All right. Yeah, so we'll call a process that is not our created process. Yes, it's not your created process. It will be another process which is previously created by someone. Yes, it's a process that is available within the system. Okay, I'm looking forward to this. And this means you're going to post your app in the web, and anyone can fill in the information. So the end-to-end scenario, you can actually start to prepare for it yourself. I would recommend that for next week Tuesday session. Go ahead, try and create everything they ask you to do because it is in a test format. And next week Tuesday, we will go and create it together. Um, um, uh, the end-to-end scenario, it asks us to create a process quite like this. The only difference is that it doesn't ask you to use a form trigger, it asks you to use an API trigger. It then asks you to build this app that you see right here. So this is actually a spoiler to the end-to-end. And yeah, I wouldn't say you'll be able to yeah some homework, but it's good to do this because then I do want you to get stuck just a bit, and you might even not get stuck. You might be able to create it fully, but it's good to get stuck such that that muscle memory in the exam when I'm not here or no one else is there, you can figure things out. Uh, that is the purpose of these. But this was essentially everything I wanted to showcase, guys. Within process automation, at least, this is what the certification will also ask you to do: create a process. I went through some of the artifacts, the artifacts that won't be used, like an action, a decision table, and so on. But yeah, we can officially then go into the Q&A section. The BTP stuff is not relevant because you won't be asked to do it. So at this stage, um, I don't want to showcase anything that will further confuse you because there has been a lot of information already. But trust me, you are fine with what you've gathered. But yeah. If at this stage, if you do need to drop, I'm glad that it has been helpful as well. And yeah, try and enjoy the rest of your week as well. It's almost Friday, and we'll see you on Tuesday, where we will be. That will be our final week next week, essentially. And by Tuesday, by the end of Tuesday, I'm just looking at the dates. Next week, Tuesday is the 21st. By even Saturday the 25th, depending on your weekend plans, or Friday the 24th, I want you to be able to book your exam. Or even, that's pushing it. Maybe you can do it on the week of the 27th, or but yeah, you will have the confidence to say, I can do this. And trust me, you will be able to do it. All right, guys. I enrolled for the 24th. Let's hope. All right. No, no, you'll be fine. Okay, do you have the Malta file here? Oh, yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Let me share that uh, of this application. It's called Automation 2. You can import it as well. Um, um, will we be asked to build and deploy the app or just the process? We will be asked to deploy the process. So deploy the process because you need to deploy it so that you can receive the trigger link. The build app, you will just need to test it by hitting submit, and then it goes and gives you that successful toast. If that happens, then it's done. Um, can you please share a step-by-step guide on 21st? I have exam booked. Okay, which date do you have exam booked? And step-by-step guide, I will create it for the end-to-end scenario. So I'll do it in the meeting or in the session, but I'll create a document that I will share at the end of that day as to how we did what we did. It will literally be all the steps that we took because, we can't record these sessions. So just to have a document to fall back on. All good. Thank you. We can go directly. Otherwise, we'll have to relearn it. I hope we can go directly to the exam. Otherwise, no, you will be able to go directly into the exam after the Tuesday session. As long as you try first by yourself, because it's easier when I'm doing it and I'm talking, but as soon as you have to do things yourself and navigate, then the mind says, oh, by the way, how do I do this? But once you have that muscle memory, you'll be fine. I haven't enrolled for Friday. Okay, no, that's fine. Do we need to build any code knowledge for the certification? Well, the coding, this is a low code tool. So the coding is dragging and dropping the artifacts. So that's as far as coding happens. And this class summary, please. This class summary, yes. This class summary was everything process automation. So you will find it in this learning journey. Um, this learning journey is this class's summary. So if you've gone through this learning journey, then you have everything that we covered today. Build process automation. But that's why the end-to-end scenario just brings everything together. It brings build apps, it even brings a bit of work zone and process automation. There's the link. But there will be no need to publish our process to the library, right? Yes, that's a good question. Since we won't be using our own process in the app, yes, there won't be a need. There won't be a need. That's why I didn't even showcase those steps today, because previously that would have been important. But with build apps, not being used in the future, knowing those steps are not important anymore. But yeah, there won't be any need to publish our process. But for the end-to-end scenario, you do need to do it just for holistic completion. Uh, but yeah, so someone is just asking this process that we just created, would we need to, if I click on here and click on versions on this deployed version, would we need to publish to library? Publish to library is what makes it available in Build Apps when we go to integrations and add integration library. We don't need to publish it because we're not even going to be calling our process. Okay, fair question. For the exam, should we wait for the certification, refresh, or book prior to that? Please book prior to that. Everything that we're going through is such that you book prior to that. That certification refresh will bring changes that I haven't even seen myself because I don't sit the test. So I don't know what new type of content they'll be asking us to perform. Yes, thank you. Do it before since it will be reworked. As long as it stays valid, I guess. Thanks. No, it will stay valid. It will stay valid. Even if you have the theoretical certification, the multiple choice one, that's still valid. Link. Okay, there is a link to the Learning Hub. Do we need to build any code knowledge for this? You don't need any build code knowledge for the certification. Any other tip for the cert? If we fail, if we will fail the exam, be the same if we try again. Yes, yes, it will be the same. Funny enough, if you take it once, you keep a question paper for when you write again. That's how right now it's just so open. So um, you keep the same question paper, and when you write again, it's going to be that same. So you can even practice it. But trust me, yeah, uh, oh, okay, no, I appreciate that. All right. Yes, if you guys would like to connect, where we can send direct messages, you can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Just search me. I'm sure you'll see someone with my picture. Otherwise, it's a pleasure. If you enjoy my explanations, I know I talk a bit fast sometimes, but yeah, I'm also a student in the sense that I also join live sessions and or other presentations, and I know what I like to hear, what I don't like to hear, and so that's why I can better explain certain things. But yeah, all good, guys. That's it from me.